Van Sebastian here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge Season 10 Episode 36 interview. We'll be talking with Daniel W.K. Lee and discussing his book Anatomy of Want. So let's get to know our guest. Daniel W.K. Lee is a third-generation refugee, born in Kuching, Malaysia, to an ethnic Cantonese family who fled wars in China and then Vietnam. He made his escape to New Orleans with his head-turning whippet, Camden. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I have to ask, head-turning?
Yes. My dog has literally stopped traffic. When I first got him back in Seattle, I remember walking around my neighborhood and there was a woman who was about to cross into like one of the main thoroughfares. And she kind of stopped in the middle of it and she's like, "What kind of dog is that?" And I was like, "It's a whippet." And she's like, "Oh my God, your dog is so beautiful." And then fortunately she wasn't like hanging like you're keeping like traffic from going. But he's done that here in New Orleans as well, like people pulling over and just asking about him.
Oh,
So
very cool.
yeah, I
Very
kind of
cool.
feel like I'm part of his entourage rather than like me doing
And at least it wasn't you making a fool of yourself in that respect. Unlike my mother, who actually was at an intersection and Desi Arnaz pulled up in a limousine and he had the window rolled down and he asked my mom in Spanish, you know, do you know how to get to blah, blah, blah? My mom just explained it all to him. And, oh, thank you, Sonora. And so he rolled up the window. She goes walking across the crosswalk, stops everything, and then goes because it dawned on her who she was talking to, and she points at the car and starts screaming, yeah. So at least on your side, it's the dog that's getting the attention, and you're able to just play it off like, oh yes.
Honestly, I wish though at least that it would get me, I don't know, like attractive men like coming up to
Well,
me and
there's always, yeah.
Are
and
you
it's never
supposed to be a
happened.
magnet? No?
It's never not for me. My a friend of mine used to kind of be his puppy sitter back in Seattle, and he would constantly get people approaching him for the dog, and it's never worked for me. And
Oh.
so I'm kind of
You
sometimes
better
I'll just
reevaluate your contract.
I'll often, or at least when he was younger, he's 10 years old now, but like I would say, I would come home and I would be like, "So have you applied for jobs? How are you paying for your upkeep here there, buddy? I mean, like
Yeah, right, right.
you're not helping me,
Yeah,
you know?"
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So we are actually here to talk about you. I was just curious about that line in your bio. What, where's the spark to write? And it sounds like you've had a past.
Oh, don't say it like that. God, it sounds like
I
wanted
have had a
poster.
past too, but yeah, my creative journey actually didn't start in writing, really. I have a very vivid memory of kind of being affirmed by adults with just kind of art, actually. I remember in kindergarten drawing or painting a jack-o'-lantern and the teacher being like, "Oh, that's so good." And I think that's kind of the like the my current obsession with like pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns. Oh, I just love them so much. But also like I would spend time like d- in a coloring book and just color and stuff like that while the adults were doing their adult whatever, and just remembering adults saying, "Wow, you're very good at coloring." So I was kind of always like, or at least not always, but like very young, I felt affirmed by creativity or things like that. And I didn't really get an affinity to writing, I guess, until much later, but I did start writing poems when I was younger. Like I would say I remember writing little like love poems for this girl in fifth grade. This is obviously pre-gay.
Mhm.
Um uh yeah, writing these kind of like super sing-songy poems for her. And then in junior high, I would write them for um boys to give to their girlfriends and stuff like that. And so not until I would say like in high school that I was like, oh, I have something to say, and this is in the or mid 90s, and I had a very kind of political. I had something to say about politics, and that time it was about about AIDS and stuff like that, and just social injustice, and that's kind of like how that found expression. And then when I got to undergrad, it was like this kind of tug of war inside me in a way of like, do I pursue something visual art oriented, or or writing or something? And I actually initially went to NYU to do photography,
Mm,
but then I realized that there was a lot um, more talented photographers out there, and it's expensive to be
Mm-hmm.
a photographer,
Mm-hmm.
especially in New York City at that time. I was like, this is not the way. And so I just kept on doing more. I kept on writing, and in a way, writing is the most economically just kind of art form. You can literally just, a pen and a napkin, and you can write.
Mm-hmm.
So
there you go.
um yeah, I just kept on writing, and eventually, after my MFA, and I had a cohesive manuscript, and I was able to get that out in the world.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So, Anatomy of Want. Let's talk about it. If I
Yeah.
were to walk up to you like a book fair or a Pride festival and see it on a table and saw that cup, the beautiful cover it, and ask, "What is this about?" What would you tell me?
I would say it's an exploration of desire, but not in the way where we think of it only as a romantic wanting. I certainly the poems within it are certainly um, kind of touch on like the idea of sexual desire to a degree, but I don't think it really goes there. It's interesting because I think about it like the title. I knew that's the title I wanted ever since even before I even wrote the titular poem.
Hmm.
But there's not really any sex poems per se, like what you think of as sex poems. But
Hmm.
everyone kind of says like it really is a very sensual, or kind of book. Um, so I think it's I think maybe the cover, which is a beautiful and evocative, not
Yep.
provocative, but evocative cover, in some ways may overpromise. But I think the poems kind of, they do similarly to what the cover does, which is try to kind of evoke and explore ideas of desire that um, I think I hope kind of inspires, or like makes, or just kind of registers to people as beautiful.
Love it. So, can we talk about the cover for a second? Because I was trying to figure
Sure.
out the symbolism. Do you have a copy you can hold up
Yeah. Let's
just so
see.
people can see it? Because what I'm about to say makes more sense if you can see it.
Sidebar. Yeah, hold it in
Perfect.
front of you
Yep, like
because
right in front of your face so it doesn't fuzz.
it's still not doing it. It's because you have everything else blurred. It's not.
Oh, it's not gonna do that. Oh,
Yeah, sometimes it helps if it's right in front of you, but put it down just a little bit
There, oh, there.
and closer
Perfect.
to you. Yeah, that like that. Okay.
All right. So in the cover, man is sitting on the floor facing a mirror, but what caught me was the central core of his being is missing. Was that an intentional choice? And can I ask about it?
yeah. It's so this photograph is by a photographer in California named Eric Schwabel, and I don't remember how I came upon it. Maybe because I had seen his work previously of a of a model named Alex Minsky, and then I saw this on his website, and I thought like I just loved it from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's evocative. It's not provocative. You don't see like full crotch. It's
Right.
just not like that's not what it's like. To me, that's not what it's about. It is about like titillating a bit, and it's kind of like the striptease, and so that's kind of what I wanted for the cover because I have a marketing background. I know sex sells, and this isn't promising sex per se, but it winks.
Uh-huh.
It it I don't for me it's like I don't care if you don't love the poetry inside, but if you love that cover and it still made you buy the book, I'll take my 10%.
Right. Well, yeah.
And I'll tell people like, even if nothing else, it looks good on your coffee table,
Hmm.
that but I hope that you would love the poems inside as well. So yeah, I mean, I initially it wasn't I wasn't sure if the you know if the photograph was available.
Hmm.
Um and when concepts for the cover had come up, I was like, these weren't hitting, and so I reached out to Eric and procured the rights to use the photograph myself, and I'm super happy about it because it really kind of does like I think it is a kind of like visual manifestation of what I'm trying what I'm the manuscript is doing.
Hmm.
What is interesting to me is a lot of people ask if it's me, uh,
You
and
should
I
say,
don't.
yes, it's me.
I except that I just don't grow chest hair, and it's like you have to look, and you're
Well,
like,
you
oh
could
yeah,
no, you could play it off just like Mike Myers did in Austin Powers. I applicate a rug.
um, but if they want to think it's me, that's fine. But it's not me. But yeah, I love it. It's a great photograph to me, and so I'm really happy to get to use it.
Nice.
So,
Yeah.
just kind of circling back on Vance's question, so it's not a novel; it is a book of poetry.
Hmm.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because you mentioned poems, but we didn't clarify for the audience. I just wanted to make sure that was out there so people know.
Yeah.
So you've hinted that sex sells and that it is evocative, not provocative. How did you write about desire, but yet avoid that cliche?
Well, I think a lot, at least for me, I'm kind of more interested in the kind of internal drama that kind of navigates people through
Mm.
their their desires and the kind of the craziness that we kind of can subject ourselves to. And so that's what I focused on. I keep on saying kind of. That's what I focused on as I wrote the poems, and it wasn't a specific creative project for me,
Hmm.
but it's just the poems I've been writing for um the past 15 years up until that point or so, and they kind of cohered, I think, as a manuscript in that regard. Yeah, I think there is I don't want to say like sex poems are kind of a cheap accomplishment.
Hmm.
The I think the craft of writing a really great sex poem is just it's like writing a funny poem. It's difficult. Especially because sex poetry uh, can be subject to a lot of cliche.
Hmm.
And if I can anticipate or expect like a simile or just certain kinds of adjectives, I'm turned off.
Right.
Not like, boner killer, but I'm like, oh, that wasn't that creative.
Hmm.
So I typically or I haven't written a sex poem in, in quite a while. It wasn't until like I don't know. I'm 46, so like 4 years ago I had written one in I don't know 10 years or so.
Hmm.
Written like more explicitly about a sex poem. I just kind of felt like that though I'm more interested in the kind of the like I said the way desire animates us and
Right.
internally and externally the kinds of fallouts and uh, mental gymnastics that we put ourselves through.
Right. So in all of the press for this book, because I went hunting for it and I found a lot of it, you're also praised as a queer Asian poet, Asian American poet, excuse me. Does that element of your or that aspect of your being make it into this book?
I think so. I certainly, I can't write that book without the confluence of my identity and who I
Mhm.
am at this very moment. I think that this idea that we need to separate the author from the writing is kind of like cultural violence, especially for people who do come from a specific experience. I feel like as if that writing could exist without the kind of the
Hmm.
baggage and everything that had transpired to make the person that person,
Uh-huh.
and that person, being able to write about whatever is still a product of those identities, those experience and stuff like that. So, you know, um, yeah, like I think about Chen Chen as another queer Asian American poet, and he said, I write for queer, Asians. I write for queer Asian
Hmm.
Americans,
Hmm.
um, and I guess she would agree that's who I'm writing for too. And so far as the kind of community, uh, or the my contemporaries that I'm kind to be in conversation with. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I think some of the best. Queer poetry has come from Asian Americans for quite a while, right? Ocean Vuong and Chen
Hmm.
Chen and Ali Ong, and there's just so many that are Justin Chin. And so, I'm very happy to be kind of in that, in that community, even if it's not like a community, but, if we can put
Cadre of
a
writers.
yeah, exactly. If I mean, there's probably plenty of people who haven't heard of me, which is fine. Um,
That's why you're doing this.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But like to be able to mention in the same sentence as like Kazim Ali or Aga Shahid, or whose work I admire so much. It's great to uplift and want to be part of be a cultural producer that wants to, you know, um, quote unquote represent,
Hmm.
uh, so yeah, I mean, I want to always be able to kind of elevate um, queer Asian American writers, poets in particular, for sure, and platform and do my part and kind of expand the spotlight, so to speak, on our writing.
Love it.
Okay, so I
So,
have a couple of loaded questions here.
Love that.
Because, yeah, I could tell you do. So, as a fellow extrovert, I get you. Um, okay, so I don't know if you've ever seen it, but back in the early aughts, Alec Mapa did a great comedy bit in West Hollywood. And one of the sequences he talks about is that, going out with men who were not Asian. He had an experience where somebody said, "Oh, I just find you so exotic," and he thought, "Well, I'm not a fish. What's exotic about me?" He had that whole cultural disconnect of like, because he doesn't have a third eye or a third arm or something, and yet that perception exists. So, does that element figure into the way that you, especially because you have the title Anatomy of Want? There are people who fetishize those kinds of relationships, and it plays a factor in want and desire in sometimes very complicated and murky ways. I'm wondering if any of the work addresses from a cultural standpoint how Gaysians, especially for your intended audience and initially, how you think it may have colored what you've written about that subject matter.
I'm not sure if it. did, or if I address it directly in Anatomy of Want, I think actually the current book that I've been, working on, or manuscript, which is called For Identification Purposes Only, kind of more kind of um, address that. Certainly, I think it's always touching that idea, the kind of for me, I'll just say that, it's to me, exoticization is just a kind of extreme form of othering,
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
you've taken this idea of the other into a eroticized space that the individual no longer is actually as relevant, more
Right.
having to
Right.
do with the kind
Right.
of like the physical attributes, or whatever kinds of cultural delineations or cues that kind of render this ethnicity or
Mm-hmm.
whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is made attractive. um i I don't think the poems, and I wrote this, there's so many poems in there that I wrote like almost 20 years ago at this point, but I don't think the poems um directly like mention that or kind of address it.
But the
But
new work, I mean, the new work
then
you're hinting
yeah,
at
in the
is,
new work I do kind of talk about it in terms of like the sexual marketplace. There's poems about kind of um grinder. I don't call it grinder, but it's it's clearly about apps and stuff like that, and like
mm-hmm.
how there is a racial sexual hierarchy, and and Asians are probably on the lower end of it, and talking about like how does that exist in that space. And so the poem is kind of is the experience of being kind of a headless torso,
Mm-hmm.
and then being
Very much like the picture of your book.
right, exactly, being a headless torso, and then getting a DM and being like curious about, and then finally when the face is revealed, they're like, oh, never mind. And so this
Uh-huh.
kind of like you're the inversion of the inversion of the exotic or the eroticized other, where it's like the body is great and everything like that, but then when you see the kind of the racializing components, it like it brings you to the other side, where it's like almost kind of revulsion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm keen on that, because obviously I had, at least I feel like I experienced that, but then I also had a kind of that inversion in terms of my own personal history. While I was in college, I was a I was a stripper to make some money, and at least pay my credit card bills. I wasn't making money, but I'd
Yeah.
pay my credit card bills.
Keeping
And
your
so
head
that was
above
really,
water.
yeah, exactly. And so that was, an interesting kind of psychological um, recalibration for me, that actually made me a very sad person for several years. It didn't really align with kind of how I saw myself, um, and it took a while for me to kind of reconcile those things. And I, you know, whether it lives or is present in the poems of Anatomy of Want, I don't think I intentionally wrote them that way. But I think in for identification purposes only, I am trying to at least put a magnifying glass to it, and showing like there is sexual racism in the gay community,
Mm-hmm.
and these are the moments that exist, and that exist for um, queer Asian American cis men, perhaps. And so, yeah, I mean, like desire is political.
Mm-hmm.
As queer people, obviously, like we know that intimately, and I'm not gonna give like just like of gay men in particular a pass just because they're gay men, to
Mm-hmm.
like that, oh, like you've been oppressed at some point, like that's enough, that if we not learn anything about intersectionality, that there are other ways in which um our experiences. It's not like a, Olympics of victimization or whatever, but like is they're different, and um, I choose to I choose to I choose to write about those differences in poems sometimes.
Yeah, well, and the reason why I'm asking, I mean, obviously, in this hyper divisive situation we all find ourselves in, um, you know, Captain Cankle's McTaco Tits and all of his entourage. Um, the reason why I think is it's very important that you, as a queer writer of color, and I think our voices are more needed because the more we normalize our experiences, and the more we give by example the ability to convey that. I take it back to me as a Latino, Latino, half Native. My own experience at 16 discovering the works of John Rechy, who I think is one of the most poetic writers out there, especially when it involves sex scenes. I really started to understand parts of my culture that I could see in his writings. And that's why I'm asking you, because I when I consume media, I consume our queer media across all spectrums. I watch a lot of queer content for Black audiences. I watch Dear Straight People, which is a really great Gaysian YouTube channel. I love that channel. So I'm always wanting to know what my other queer brothers and sisters, particularly of color, are up to and what's going on in the community, because as a fellow person of color, I need to know where we all stand and what's going on with us. And I know I'm kind of an outlier in most respects, but what I love about your book is that, and what you're hinting at is things that I like to write about, which is about perception, which is what governs everything we do. And the element, your anatomy of want, is really discussing, in my mind, the concept of allure, which is something we've lost as a society. In this hypersexualized society where women, tend to want to reveal more, I go back to the old saying, I'm not sex shaming, I'm not girl, do you, baby doll. But, my whole thing is the biggest power women have, and even men, is the power of allure. And it's something that creates that desire, that want. I want to know more, I want to see more, I want to touch more. And I think that in that title, what I got out of what you explained was that it's that concept of allure, what creates that mystery that you need to explore further. Am I wrong in thinking that?
Yeah, I think that's actually a great word. I would also add maybe craving. I'm a Buddhist, and so there's a lot of talking about the idea of craving. The one of the opening poems in the book is actually not about sex at all. It's about a young boy's relationship with his father, who is uh, uh, kind of alienated the child, kind of disowns them, and it's a tension between, does this now older man want a relationship with this estranged father, and it clear and it seems like there is this maybe a little bit of craving for that relationship, what has been lost. And um you you can read the poem and see it, not necessarily, but it is a kind of want, right? It's a different kind of craving in terms of our relationship with another, and it doesn't necessarily have a sexual dynamic or a romantic dynamic, but that want to have a relationship with a family member is a kind of want that I want to explore too. And but like, so it could be allure in terms of like a romantic or sexual, like
Or even knowledge,
evocativeness. Yeah,
wanting
yeah,
to know something more,
for sure,
Yeah. Love that.
for sure.
Yeah, those are my two loaded questions. I wanted to explore that a little bit because I really like it when queer content creators of color are out in that space talking about those things, because I think it's the only way we can address that kind of ismness that goes on with especially within the queer community. And I think we need to keep kind of chiseling away at a lot of those perceptions, to make people understand, hey, I bleed just like you do. I have the same issues you do. I have, that we're not the other. We are very much all of them, and I think as a community, we need to do what we do best, and that is dig deep and rise up in a much better form. And I think our community can do those things. I just don't see a lot of effort in that. And I think what Trump and his regime are doing are kind of creating more divisiveness rather than, bringing us together. And I really applaud you for writing what you wrote in this book, because it does, I think, start to make people ponder at the very least what makes us want something, it poses the provocative and evocative question, and I think that's wonderful. So bravo to you for putting it down on paper.
Thank you. I mean, honestly, I will add though, I think there is a um, over overarching, political project in it as well that
Mm,
maybe I was aware of, which is that um, Asian American men historically in media were profoundly desexualized and still are.
mm,
And to write about queer Asian American male sexuality is still very kind of going against that grain, like to sexualize and then try to and sexualize outside of like these, exoticized roles, right?
mm-hmm.
Like the perpetual Asian bottom or something like that. And I don't think that that's a problem to be, to write and create content of, coming from or being in
That
like Asian
space.
bottom or
Hmm.
whatever, that's fine, whatever. But like, I want to write like continue to push
Yeah, no,
the and create
absolutely.
more space of like of sexualized Asian American um, male um, subjectivity and desire and things like that because it continues to be the we continue to be like the unkissable on screen and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So the
Hmm.
more kind of doing that, then the better.
Yeah, absolutely, love
Yeah.
it.
So, is there anything about your book, Anatomy of Want, that you want readers to know that we didn't think to ask?
Um, no, I there are a lot of ghazals in here, which is an ancient form that can be challenging to read because there isn't a kind of necessarily a cohesion to what's going on in the poem. But I think what's so magnificent about them is that they are really um, uh, there's a compression within the poems because each stanza is its own. And so there is I would say, an aesthetic hurdle that you need to kind of get through. And I hope the language kind of helps the reader go through. Oh, and I guess the other thing is I often write about God. I use a lot of religious nomenclature, and I'm not a believer. I don't believe in God. Like I said, I'm a Buddhist. But what I'm interested in aesthetically, no matter what, is the kind of using language and all its baggage
Mm,
to and and leverage it to kind of evoke or provoke a feeling in someone. And I find religious language to be just that. I think people have very strong feelings about words like abomination. That's just like my go-to word. And so I want to take everyone's baggage with that word or any word that, especially with religion, and kind of use it to provoke and evoke. And um, so yeah, I I'm not a believer, but I do love using religious language.
well, they're using it, why not you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Are you ready for those get to know you questions?
absolutely.
Take it
Okay,
away,
well,
Baz.
Before we get to that, if you like what we're doing, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, do all the things. If you want to help support us and keep the lights on, go to patreon.com/rope podcast or at buymeacoffee.com/rope podcast. Got to put my dentures back in, obviously. With all of that said, let's get into the weeds with Daniel. Can you name a movie that was better than the book?
Honestly, I struggle with this one because I don't read a lot of fiction, and although I do like films, I don't watch a lot of films. I kind of have to be directed towards them. So
Over here.
I'm gonna veer and I'm gonna say the opposite, which is there's a play that I've read, which I think was so incredible. And then when I saw it staged, I was like, wow, this wasn't what I expected. And the play is called Night Mother. I think the playwright is Marcia Norman. And it's a very sad, depressing play about I don't know if you're familiar, it's about a daughter and their mother, and the daughter wants to unalive herself, and she's trying to explain to her mother, like, you know, like why we're doing this, and the mother kind of goes through it all to trying to keep her alive, and it's depressing. And I read it my freshman year, and just crying and crying, and then I saw it staged on Broadway, and I was like, this is a lot more funny than I thought it would be. It was still pretty devastating, but it was like, like I wanted it to kind of wreck me, like just completely and
It's your
totally.
perceptions. You're filtering it through your perceptions. It's yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, oh, there's some levity here and everything like that. So I was, I guess, a little bit disappointed. I don't know,
Okay.
but yeah, I lean towards like wanting total devastation.
Okay.
Um, oh, you know what? That actually helped me. Telling that story, that actually helped me because I actually think the film Brokeback Mountain was better than the book.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
And I love both.
Yeah. Well, Ang Lee is just brilliant at framing. He knows what he's doing.
110%.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Which fictional character would you most like to be friends with? Man who doesn't consume
So
fiction.
yeah, I had to really kind of go through this. So there is a book called Rolling the R's by Arzamar Lindmark. I read also in college, but young queer Filipinos in Hawaii. And the main character is named Edgar Ramirez, I believe. And I think I'd be curious about being friends with older Edgar,
Mm.
having seeing the world that he was, was raised in, was growing up in in the book. I'm kind of curious what kind of adult Edgar would have been, and I think I'm fascinated by, what my relationship with someone who's kind of had that similar, or that kind of experience. So Edgar Ramirez from Zach Mark.
Excellent. All right. Well, what is the most fascinating fact that you know?
I don't know, I guess what's fascinating, right? Like, I kind of told two of them, I guess, that I was used to be a stripper in college to pay my credit card bills. And I'm very Buddhist. I don't come across as like that, like a holy person, but it's really integral to kind of the way I am, how I navigate my daily life or my life. So, pick or choose,
Yep.
ex stripper or Theravada Buddhist.
Yeah. 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 Okay. What was your favorite subject in school?
History.
Ah,
Love
love that.
history. History. Mhm.
And you have to have the right teacher when because if you have a really crappy or not interested teacher teaching you history, it can be the worst subject in school.
I mean, I loved it ever since I would say even like second grade. I just would love reading the kind of the facts of the
Mm-hmm.
matter
Mm-hmm.
of things, and kind of it didn't even I didn't even need my second grade teacher to kind of elaborate. I was just so interested in like the historical points and stuff like that. We would do this thing called history, I think called a history baseball or something like that, and the entire class was divided into two, and you kind of there was these bases, and every the teacher would ask a question, and if you got it right, that person would go to first base, and you kind of kept on going around, and and if you didn't get it right, it was first out. This kind of whole thing, this thing, and you know, uh, kids wanted me on their team because I just like knew everything. Like you could not ask a question
It
and
was
I
the
not know the
sports team
answer.
that you were built for.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I mean, so I've always loved history.
All right, fair enough. Well, before making a telephone call, do you rehearse what you're going to say?
No.
I don't think extroverts can do that. We're just too in the moment of.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. And I think it's also though like the question is really interesting because I think it skews towards it skews older because we use the phone to
Oh
call to
yeah.
talk to people, like
Who
not the
calls?
aggressiveness of being like, "Oh, why did you call me? Like what's going on?" Like,
Yeah.
I love using the phone. I love using FaceTime, the whole thing or whatever, but if it doesn't come for my younger friends, if you do that without a text first to kind of like figure it out, like to I don't know, warn them, it
An
feels for them to be
invasion.
an aggression. Yeah, like ugh, like oh, okay.
Yeah, these poor kids, they have no idea what it was like to have wired telephones.
Love rotary phone. Come on.
Mhm.
Yeah. Or just the fact that it would call and you had no idea who the hell it was.
Oh, exactly, exactly. Caller ID on a little thing on next to your phone.
That was a huge leap in tech.
Oh my goodness, for sure. It's
Okay,
like when
what
you're a poor person and suddenly you get cable. You're like, this technology, what's going on? Yeah,
yeah, right. Wait, there's more than three channels?
exactly.
Okay, well, what current event or causes are you most passionate about?
Palestinian liberation.
Hmm.
Um, it's really what I've been writing for the past, I don't know, 2 years or so for the majority of for many reasons, and um, to me it's the intersection of all intersectionalities. It's our moral compass, and if we fail, which we're failing now, it's really a sign or a sign of humanity's moral failing.
Yep.
So yeah, that would be that.
Okay, love it. If you could visit anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Bhutan.
Hmm.
Bhutan. Well, they restrict how many people can come. So already it's kind of
Oh yeah,
like the
no.
exclusive club. Like I can't get in, I want to
Talk
get
about a
in.
lure. Talk about a
Yeah,
lure.
exactly. It's like you said I can't go in, I want to go in. And then when they do let you in, it's like very you have to kind of do it through a government government sanctioned agency and stuff like that. You get taxed like $150 a day just to be in their country because they're just like, we don't want outside whatever
Influence. Yeah.
y'all are doing craziness. Like, so yeah, I would love to go to Bhutan. It probably costs, I don't know, $10,000 or whatever, but like if money were no object, that's where I'd go.
Okay. Okay. Love that. Okay. Who, if anyone, was your first celebrity crush?
Oh gosh, like I was thinking about this, like what is a crush? Is it just like pure physical attraction or something? And I wanna, so I litigated over it in my head, and I would say that I would say like crush in the sense of someone I find attractive I would actually want to meet and like like get flushed in the face with, whatever is very recent. It would be Jonathan Bailey. I think he's wildly charismatic, and I like, yeah, I would say like I would like want to like hang out with him, but also be like, ha, you are really just something out of my league, and I'm gonna just sit here and just bask in your sunlight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm that way with Lee Pace, so I get you. I totally get
Yeah.
you. All right. So, what's your personal favorite recipe that you make, and are you willing to share it with us?
I would say this kind of Indian spiced king cake. I make about three or four every year now since I've moved here to New Orleans. And yeah, I mean, it brings a lot of people joy. And I don't actually love baking, but I seem to love making these king cakes come carnival. And yeah, I would totally share that.
Okay.
It's a, it's kind of like a vegan brioche kind of situation, and
Wow. Okay.
with
Yeah.
uh Indian kind of spices, sweet. So absolutely.
Okay.
Love it.
Absolutely. Well, you made it through the list. Bravo. Round of
uh
applause.
So you've teased the upcoming work, very political in nature. Do you want to talk about it yet, or is it still kind of under covers?
um yeah, it's very different from Anatomy of Want in the sense that I am, or the poems within it are decisively more politically oriented, making kinds of commentary, and um, I'm kind of not eschewing, but I'm just kind of letting that like anger and political voice like shine through. And if it's not necessarily beautiful all the time, I'm okay with that. It's a little bit more aggressive, which is fine. Yeah, it was definitely more of a project. The titular poem, for identification purposes only, it was inspired by a interview that I had heard on this program, Democracy Now, as a news program, and it's
Hmm.
about it was there was an interview with a young woman who survived a garment factory fire, and yeah, so it kind of like inspired the project insofar as I wanted to write politically,
Hmm.
so to speak, through these kind of experiences of of folks and myself for sure, or imagined situations. And so a lot of it is, yeah, that kind of more politically slanted work, and there's quite a bit about Gaza and Palestine. And so I don't know when to stop. I hope maybe I'll kind of like, shut the valve at the by the end of the year and then move on to the next book. Which I think my mentor will be very happy to hear that I'm working on two manuscripts. Um, but yeah, I hope that comes out within a year or two or something like that as I work on a new book about my experiences here in New Orleans. So, um, yeah.
Nice. Love that. Love
Well,
that.
where is the best place for people to keep up with your updates as this project progresses?
The best would be actually if people would be so kind is to join my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Daniel WK Lee. They're even free, I think a free membership, but if you also follow me on social media, Strong Plum, at Strong Plum on Instagram, or Strong Plum on Upscroll, or Blue Sky. It's Daniel WK Lee. There's
We
also a
can
Daniel
provide all the
WK
links on the
Lee.
website. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, stuff like that, like on Facebook. So social media, or join my Patreon for
Perfect.
$5.
Perfect. Well, Daniel, any final words of wisdom?
Oh, wisdom. I
Yeah.
don't know.
After all this, you got to be smart.
Yeah. Well, one respected actor, a friend of mine, would say to me, older British man, he would say, Daniel, um, never offer advice, and never take advice. We'll say
Nice.
that. he was incredible at giving advice, though. He was very kind of like this Oscar Wildean, like in terms of his wit and everything. You just couldn't help but ask him for advice, but he would always kind of copy on just to say like, you don't have to take my word for it. You need to kind of figure it out for yourself, which is, I guess I was attracted to it because that's one of the fundamental things about Buddhism. The Buddha would say, you have to test it out for yourself. You can't know what I'm telling you is the truth until you figure it out that it's the truth for you. So
Love it.
That Buddha, he knew some stuff.
He knew some stuff.
All right, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Daniel Lee for being with us here today. Daniel, thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me. I'm such an honor, and y'all are great interviewers. So charming.
We do what we can.
Yeah.
All of our charming guests.
You should see, we're like a swan. We're really good at the production, but underneath our legs are going like this.
Yep. All right, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. The show was produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listening stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.roguepodcast.com. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye-bye now.
Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.